everybody, look at this right here. It seems like we have a homeless bum in the Lake subdivision. Can you believe it? They're creeping up everywhere. Holy shamoly. And then look at this. It's one of these stupid traffic lights that doesn't even turn green on time. Hello everyone, hope everybody is doing well. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe, share the videos. Welcome aboard. Hope everybody is doing well. And before I begin, I want to show you the fact that we are about to experience a heat wave, and there's a possibility we could hit 110 degrees, although they keep forecasting, but we'll have to really see. It's going to be a record-breaking heat wave, not just in this side of the country, but I believe in the Northeast is going to have low temperatures, some even in the 70s. So really interesting time we're in. So I want to talk about the employment situations, US-born versus immigrants. And no one can deny that immigrants, foreign-born especially, have been hit hard disproportionately in this crisis. Now, it really all depends on which part of the country you are in. If you are looking at some states like Arizona, California, it's not so bad. So let's take a look right here. Natives is at 17%, immigrants in Arizona is 13%. You can see here in California, it's 19% for US born. For immigrants, it's about 20%. So there's hardly any difference. But here is the really huge shocker to all of this. And that is this state, Nevada. And you can see that for natives, it is about 31%. That is the highest in the United States. And I know a lot of you can blame Sizzlag, this guy or that guy, but once again, it's largely because of our economy. But here's the number that is the highest out of all the percentages you see here. Foreign-born population, immigrant population without a bachelor's degree. And the ones that do have degrees is not a whole lot different. But without bachelor's degree, it is close to 45-50%. It is a very high number. The highest number in the country and the highest jump in the United States, because back in February, we're about 3%, much lower than the 5.5% you saw in Arizona and California. And this is largely due to the fact because our industries are different. Those two states rely more on immigrant agricultural labor. We really don't have that here in Nevada. And because these immigrants are disproportionately heavily employed at these casino, hospitality, tourism sector, and I've talked about this many times, this is one of the reasons why we saw the largest demographic change since 1990, the highest increase in percentage of foreign-born than any other state in the US 2 years before I was born, because the hospitality sector disproportionately likes to employ them. And many can argue the same can go with nursing and construction. And by the way, a lot of nursing jobs have been let go, and it's only going to be a matter of time where construction is going to be really hit, because the housing market is going to get affected one way or another. And we know, and I've shown you in my previous videos, they're heavily employed in this sector too. So what does this tell you? This tells you that, well, this pumping up of immigrants as part of their grand scheme, maybe it's not meeting the goals after all that they hoped it to be. And also, a lot of people that admire or desire these people, well, they're in for a rude awakening, because with all these unemployed people, especially, we have one of the highest rates of non-citizens in the United States. The Pew Research Center pointed out that Las Vegas has among the highest rate of unauthorized immigrants in the United States for a metro area above 1 million people. This spells a lot of trouble for these people. No question about it. And you have to understand that just so much of our economy, our culture, our urban planning, our voting habits, our public schools is largely dependent on non-citizen and US citizen immigrant individuals. Keep this in mind. And so with this huge surge, what do you guys think is going to happen? Could we see civil unrest? That's possible. Could we see a mass exodus of them? That is certainly very likely on the table. Remember, we saw about so many people leave Las Vegas. Now, although our net population didn't really decline, keep in mind, though, a lot of people left. Now, the question is, when we're going to see a lot of people leave Las Vegas, will there be enough people to replace them? And the answer is that's probably a less likely chance. One of the reasons for that is that, first of all, our population is not growing as much as it used to be because our birth rates are too low. The other thing is that net immigration, as I've shown you in a previous video, is actually negative. So which means that if we see a lot of people leave Las Vegas, we're not likely to get the population recovery as we did in the last economic downturn about 10 years ago. And so why is this very, very important? Well, because population growth is part of our economic growth. Now, remember, economic growth is not as important because what matters the most is our standard of living. Keep in mind, though, that one of the reasons why our state economy has been booming is largely due to the real estate sector. And you have many people and even companies, and still Tesla's on the table, that they come to Nevada as opposed to nearby California, including immigrants, because of the very high cost of living and tax climate. Now, while many people argue, okay, Sisolak is planning to raise taxes, that could change the game, but still, regardless of whether it happens, the cost of living and taxes beat the state of California. And that's what's been propping up our numbers. So one thing that could help is that if transportation improves, we could see basic income. This could be a safe haven for a lower cost of living. However, there's a lot of other factors into play, and the tourism economy is heavily hurt by this process. There's just no question about it. And this just shows you how fragile this really is. And if this goes out of hand, we could see a mass reduction of the foreign-born population, because as these casinos open, I don't think they're going to employ the same amount of people, ladies and gentlemen. So the fact that these numbers are so high, this tells you that these casinos disproportionately employ foreign-born immigrants, as well as cab drivers, limo drivers. Many of them come from countries like Ethiopia, Philippines, etc. So this is some real shocker. And by the way, keep in mind, a lot of these employees are part of the Culinary Union. So this could really backfire Sisolak and the entire Harry Reid voting machine, or whatever you want to call it, because if these immigrants leave or they don't have the will to pump them up and bust them into the polls, well, what's going to happen is, I guess you can say that their voting strength is going to come down, and we could see not only demographic trends, but voting habits start to reverse in the state of Nevada. So these are one of the things you've got to really keep in mind. Now, as far as the national, it's not that much of a difference. It's at 18% unemployment rate, and then immigrants is about 20%. Because remember, if you look at other states like perhaps Washington, where their immigrants are more likely to be higher skilled, it's quite of a different ball game. You look at Virginia, you see immigrants have a higher percentages. Now, let's take a look at a state where it's less. So you can take a look at North Carolina. The natives about 19%, but the immigrants about 16%. So what does this really tell you? Now, look at Massachusetts. It's at 43%, almost as Nevada, believe it or not. So what does this really tell you? This tells you that Massachusetts, perhaps a lot of them are employed perhaps in cleaning, a lot of low-skilled jobs that disproportionately got affected. And I saw a lot of videos in that YouTube channel called Kite Cutter Television. I suggest you take a look at that channel. And so let's take a look at Nevada. You can see here we had about 49,000 unemployed natives. Now it's at 267,000. Then you can take a look at all immigrants. Look at this. We only had 6,000. So look at that. It's just such a very small percentage compared to the 49,000. But then take a look at this one right here. It jumps much, much faster at 98,000 people. I believe right now it's about well over 100,000. Because again, I don't really trust these numbers 100%. They could have margins of errors because it doesn't count people who were not probably in unemployment rolls or I don't know. But look at this. This is like a jump of 15 times. Meanwhile, this one is a jump about 5 times. So it shows you how fragile this casino immigrant employing system really, really is. Now let's go up and let's take a look at some of the other things. You can look at the labor force participation rate. And this is one of the problems with our economy. Right here for Nevada, for US born was 76%, it fell to 70%. Now I actually went up from February, or I guess you can say April of 2019. Now let's take a look at immigrants. It was at 77%, a little bit higher than the native population of 76. And I guess you can say it's probably because a lot of natives are probably retired or something. But then take a look at this. It stays relatively flat for much of 2020. So they're in the labor force participation rate. They were perhaps able to get unemployment, but then for natives, it actually fell. Interesting. And it actually rose by 3% in April of 2019. So something is looking pretty fishy, believe it or not. And so this one includes, obviously, if they have a college degree or not. It's about 40% for all immigrants. So the Culinary Union is really starting to have some problems. Keep this in mind. And let's go right here. This is the field I'm in. As you can see right here, you've got about 2,600 natives working in architecture. That didn't fall that much, only about 2,500. For immigrants, it's only a much smaller share, believe it or not. So I'm really glad I'm in that field because unlike a lot of different other fields, as you can see right here, immigrants really have a much larger share of the pie. If you look at, obviously, farming and forestry, a larger percentage of them. And you can just take a look at these statistics. If you look at the youth, everything else. So let's take a look at this chart. There has been a long-term decline for US born without a bachelor's degree that the COVID shutdown has continued to accelerate. Now, one of the prime concerns about our economy, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of men supported Donald Trump, is that prime men ages 25 to 54 US born has been experiencing a long-term decline in the labor force participation rate. Right now, it's at all-time lows at 82%, only 1% less than where it bottomed out, I believe, in the year of 2014. Now, keep in mind, though, that this decline has obviously continued among both genders. That's pretty much obvious. But the real sad situation, look at the sharp decline if you include 16 to 64-year-olds. And what does this really tell you is that the youth have been really let go of this economy since perhaps 2000. And of course, it worsens if you go all the way back in the 1960s. You used to have teens do these low-skilled jobs that are disproportionately now being done by immigrants. And by the way, I don't want to make sure that immigrants are the main scapegoat. It is really the lobbyists in corporate America that are to blame, okay? Now, if you look at both sexes from 16 to 24, wow, huge sharp decline, 64 to 45%, unbelievable. Now, I want to see if there's a chart for women, but I don't think there is. But I've heard a lot of reports that women have been hurt a lot more because they're more likely to be employed in hospitality, restaurants, retail, etc. So you can see here that obviously all 3 credential levels, 4 of them have actually increased. And Immigrant has increased, native born has increased, but then you can see here immigrant has increased about 4 times compared to 3 times the native born, because they're disproportionately working hospitality and restaurants. And take a look at this. The immigrant unemployment rate was less in February. Now it's much, much higher. Wow. Unbelievable. So you let me know what you think. I would like to see some statistics go all the way back to 1970 and look for women as well. And you can see here, and I think this trend is going to accelerate as the economy continues. Although many people can play around at home during the outbreak, I don't know, but the birth rates are too low, and I think this is going to be a serious problem, because when you look at obviously more family values, which is very, very important, relations, obviously people we can rely on, extended families can provide support. If you look at just, it's healthy to have children, it's healthy to build relationships and so forth, and we're losing in all this. The marriage rate is falling. We are losing our traditional values. The birth rates are falling. A lot of people argue this is not good for Social Security. Keep this in mind. Maybe this is one of the reasons why people want to overturn Roe versus Wade. And so this is going to have a long-term impacts on housing development, on preschool enrollment, K through 12, college enrollment. Keep this all in mind. It's healthy to have children. And a lot of people get depressed as they get older when they don't have children. But what has happened? Well, cost of living, and not to mention, and I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but the quality of men and women is not what it used to be compared to 50, 60 years ago. And this is one of the reasons why MGTOW has been rising up. Now, here's another article. I've promoted many times this site, but they seem to have a different opinion all of a sudden. They say the housing market indicators suggest a recession could pump home prices. I just don't really buy into that, because again, a lot of unemployed people, lack of confidence. I've heard reports that lending standards are starting to go up. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, minimum wage workers and all that stuff, they're not going to have a lot of impact on the housing market. Keep in mind, a lot of minimum wage workers live in condominiums and single family homes. They could rent rooms. You could have many that live in one house. And if they don't pay the rent, this will impact the housing market one way or another. And let's take a look at this comment. It says, this article is making some variable assumptions. First, you are assuming the demand will be anything close to where it was when we were at 3% unemployment. We may not see that for a decade. Second, you assume banks will go back to lending out loans to anyone that can fog a mirror. Third, you're assuming that forbearance fallout will have no effect on the housing on homes. Well, that's pretty obvious, because they're giving them breaks, they're giving them extensions and all that. Point being, if you're going to make a bullish case for housing prices, you can't keep falling back to low rates and supply. Well, no duh. Because keep in mind, we have been having these low rates all over the country, but if you go to much of the country, you see that their home prices have not risen. This home price pump up phenomenon has been occurring in certain parts of the United States. And not to mention the Airbnb fiasco, which is why we'll see continued climb next year. Just yesterday, I received an update from Remax from the Phoenix area, and the number of homes putting out on the market was over 2,000 less than last year, but the inventory actually climbed by a small percentage as the demand dried up. Well, it's good to see a lot of people are wising up and understanding these articles can be very, very misleading. Although this article has provided a lot of doom and gloom, keep in mind. So either way, I don't trust a lot of these sites. You let me know what you think. So another thing I also wanted to talk about is the SAT is falling out for the favor. Now, here's my point with the SAT. SATs are very neglectful. I think it's a sham that you can have a very biased exam that measures a certain type of intelligence that determines what's the chance that you can get into a university. I am just so glad that increasingly employers are not so picky about a college degree, because it doesn't measure true intelligence. There's no proof that if kids are going to college, they're actually learning, as opposed to not going to college and learning on their own or getting work experience or going to trade or whatever. But here's my thing with SAT. You know, I graduated, and this is a lesson that a lot of people here in Las Vegas really need to learn, because I know a lot of you think, oh, our schools suck, they're so low ranking. I graduated one of the highest ranking schools, and many of you remember me among the first YouTube videos I posted back in the day, because I just graduated. The highest ranking schools in the United States among. And when I moved to that area in South Orange County, my grades plummeted. In the first high school, at one point, I had straight A's, but people tell me I am smart. But let me tell you something, it all depends on how the teachers instruct and how the testing is done. SAT is an exam that only is rigged and only favors certain types of intelligence. You want to know why? Because a lot of people tell me I am smart, I am bright, but I didn't do well on that exam. I can tell you that. So this exam is heavily biased. Now, again, I believe the reason they are doing this is because they're obviously putting certain people who are low income, minorities out of disadvantage. This is all part of this affirmative action thing where they say whites and Asians, keep in mind, and many other ethnic groups do very, very well. So this kind of really debunks this idea of white privilege. But other than that, they say certain people are at a disadvantage. And I guess you can say one good thing about this whole affirmative action stuff. Maybe it's backfire, maybe it's helping in another end. But like I said, these colleges, this school system is experiencing a lot of dysfunction. And I think as a result of people staying at home, learning by themselves, I think this whole institutional system, this whole schooling establishment is really starting to crumble down. And I hope people measure true intelligence through other means. Now let's go closer to home, by the way. And speaking of the last article, you know, I really think that those folks who really want to improve our schooling system, maybe you should really think twice about measuring true performance based on SATs, GPAs, etc. And by the way, a lot of schools on the outer fringes of the valley aren't doing too bad. Keep in mind the worst performing is in the northeast part of town, and that's where you have a high percentage of English language learners, and a lot of their parents are not even here legally. And by the way, this guy is likely to, who knows, increase your taxes, not admitting that a large part of our school budget where the casinos don't want to pay, and he doesn't want to raise their taxes because he's getting a lot of kickbacks and support from individuals like Jim Murren, who appointed him in the COVID task force, which I heard a rumor from listening to the Steve Sanchez show that the reason why he blocked the hydroxy drug is he wants to get vaccines from Saudi Arabia. I could be wrong, but who knows? A lot of things could be happening. But again, I heard that tax increases against casinos, considering the lobby, is against the state constitution. So anyway, this guy talks about the fact that, well, businesses including bars and gyms and churches can finally reopen. Folks, honestly, I just think people should be free wherever they want to go. Just make people make their own decisions. At least they can make the counties make their own decisions, but it's good to see things are really starting to come back, and sooner than many other states across the country. But whether you can argue that it's been harsh or not, Mayor Goodman has been speaking out against it. The fact of the matter is, I think they're using it as an excuse to probably get a federal bailout or corporate consolidation. I don't know. But we'll really have to see. But even though if it were to open, I don't think it's going to be the same. I don't think we're going to see that kind of traffic. I've heard reports in Austin from the YouTube channel Bull Boom Bust that it really hasn't been all that great. So what do you guys think? Hopefully, maybe we can get back on our feet in terms of personal finance, but in terms of economic activity, it's not looking really good. And speaking of economics, let's have some hope. Let's not be all so doom and gloom. This doesn't mean we have to keep stacking in gold and silver. And by the way, the stock market futures are still looking green, believe it or not. The artist renderings reveal more details about the Las Vegas Strip's newest mega resort. Now, as you know, one of my most viewed videos was about this project, the Resorts World. And you can see right here that it's looking pretty attractive. I cannot wait for it to open. This is one of the reasons why I still have respect for Las Vegas. It's just this incredible, unique destination, building these exciting new projects, although that aspect has really declined over the past decade or so. But you never know, it can come back. Look at these amazing renderings. We'll have to see. Could this be a backfire or some kind of resistance against this downturn we're going to have? It's going to create jobs. Hopefully they can employ a higher percentage of native-born American workers. And keep in mind the public charge rule and the visa bans and all that has certainly changed the game as well. And hopefully this can bring confidence, more visitors, and we don't see this economic fallout that we are experiencing right now. Look at these renderings. They're pretty darn attractive. Can't wait for this place to open. And you can see here a lot of open areas, but you never know. There's a lot of parking on the sides. If we start to see more and more autonomous vehicles come along, this would reduce the need of car ownership or car rentals, whatever you want to call it. We could see those areas as well as these grassy areas get replaced and could turn into more hotel towers, residential towers, or as a matter of fact, I have a feeling that if this economy goes so bad and they have to shut down these strip hotels, we may end up becoming like Reno and they may turn them into condominiums or apartments, just like what they did over there, and maybe some kind of industry may come in and replace it. Other than that, thank you guys so much. If you like the content that I have to share right now, please share and subscribe. Get the word out there. Let's keep growing this channel. Let's be the true alternative media platform for Clark County.